It is 7 o'clock on the nose, so we will get started today with the Poquoson Planning Commission for Monday, December 6, 2021. And we will go ahead and start with an invocation. If you would like to stand and join us, we will say the Lord's Prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father,
who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come,
thy will be done, on earth.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
I know, and I was thinking the same thing. Father Bob would be having
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We have one set of minutes to approve, which is the regular session from September 20th of 2021. Does anybody have a motion prepared?
Make a motion to approve the amendments.
I'll second that motion. Trying to think who's.
Commissioner Deaver,
Aye.
Commissioner Stevens,
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan,
Pass.
Commissioner Griebel,
Aye.
Commissioner Shriver. Aye. Chairwoman Emmett. Aye. Motion passes.
Now we have an opportunity for the audience for visitors. This is for anyone to approach the Planning Commission, and if you would like to give any words or present anything, this would be for anything other than the public hearing that is currently on the schedule. And as I see none, we will close the audience for visitors. The next item on the agenda is the public hearing. We have one public hearing this evening, and that is a request for a rezoning amendment by Bob Moses of Fountains of Poquoson, owner and applicant, to revise the terms of rezoning number 5116 from B2 Business to C Village Commercial of 2.37 acres of property located on the west side of Wythe Creek Road, immediately to the south of TJ Sports Tavern, and identified further as tax map parcel numbers 27-09-2 and 27-18-2. And Wally, do you have the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Planning Commission, good evening.
Could you speak a little louder, Wally?
Absolutely. Let me put the microphone in front of me, too,
That
to
might
make
work.
sure that I'm yelling into this thing.
Is it working?
Okay, well, good. This is an amendment to an amendment and a rezoning. The original rezoning was 4047, which was passed back in 2016. But we did an amendment back in February of 2020, you may remember. And now we're basically looking at what amounts to a one-condition change to Bob's, Mr. Moses' current request. I did go ahead and pull up just a few things just to kind of accentuate where the property is. I think everybody pretty much knows where the property is, but for our folks at home, I just thought I'd pull that up. It is zoned village commercial. It's the original rezoning was from B2 to VC, but of course that is transpired. You can see that what we'll be talking about is really just germane to these two properties. But I think this is very useful when you figure out the rationale for why Mr. Moses and Fountains wants this done. When this was originally submitted in 2016, the Phase 4 area of Fountains was all residential on the plan. So we needed to get rid of the property lines in order to achieve that 2-to-1 ratio of residential to commercial development. If you look at the concept plan, which is coming up, You'll note that in the very small type here, that he is proposing 2-to-1 ratios of residential and commercial up in Phase 4, as well as Phase 3. Phase 2 was 2-to-1. That CUP has expired. He will probably do some work on revitalizing that in the future. But for right now, we're just talking about Phase 3. And what he wants to do is to be able to get rid of that condition number 3 that essentially says that prior to site plan approvals, he has to vacate all the property lines within this development. So, you know,
Holly?
yes,
Can I just ask you a question? I'm a little bit confused. Phase 3 is the bottom, I'm sorry, Phase 3 is that bottom portion, right?
correct.
And what property lines? You're talking about property lines up there?
Well, there are not any property lines right now. The only lines that you see are phase lines.
But I mean, are they part of Phase 3? Those blocks up there?
These 3 buildings.
4 and 5?
These 3 buildings right here are Phase 3.
Or what?
That's Phase 3 right there.
Okay, so they are part of Phase 3. So
Correct.
Phase 3 runs around Phase 6 here. Is that, or is that just Building 6?
Well, it's Building 6. There
Okay,
is
so
a-
that whole section then is Phase 3?
Yes,
All the way up to the pond, up, is that,
yes. There are 2 properties right now. One is right there, one is right there.
Your pointer's not working.
I know,
Well,
I'm,
yeah. The pointer doesn't work very well.
so you're saying Building 6 is on its own parcel?
Yes,
And so that's Phase what?
that's Phase 3.
Building 6 is Phase 3?
Yes,
As is 2, 3, 4, 5.
yes.
All right, so Phase 1, then, I'm trying to understand this map.
Phase 1 is already built.
Yeah,
But
that's
I was
Phase
just saying,
2
on
is
this map,
fine.
it's excluded.
Captain Harold's and
Well, I'm trying to figure out where,
Captain
Okay.
Harold's, this is already built.
that's Captain Harold's.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Captain Harold's is the bottom of Phase 1.
All right, okay,
It's
I'm
on
with
the
you.
ground
That
floor
that
of the building on
was,
Phase
I
1.
got you. I was just trying to see where the line was on Phase 1, but I can't quite make it out. But anyway, I've got you. So it runs all the way up to Building what? Building
Well, we're talking about buildings 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Right, because Building 3 is on Phase 2, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you're wanting to establish property lines between, I'm assuming, 4, 5, and 6. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm with you.
But
And
not between 2
that
and
is what
3.
the change would be from his current rezoning, which states that he has to vacate those lines.
He has to vacate those lines.
Yes.
I don't see any lines to vacate.
That's because they're not right now,
The lines are not established
because it's all one
as of now.
parcel.
Well,
They
it's
will be
two-
established as part of the site plan
It's
process.
2 parcels, right? 6 is on its own parcel,
Yes.
and then 3, 4, and 5. So the only property lines I'm looking at right now are
4 and 5 are on their
their
are
own, and
separate.
6 is on its own. So you're going to be vacating the property lines between those 2?
Bob is going to establish property lines in those 2, depending on who buys what and when.
Well,
Is that-
how are
sort
they
of-
going to be, do you have a drawing that shows what you're trying to do?
We did not have an updated concept drawing at this
Because I'm
point.
having a hard time
because that-
visualizing where the lines would go between these buildings.
Well, as I said, the staff report is going to be a little tricky because we're going to have setbacks
Yeah.
to think about when we do that. But Bob, Mr. Moses has not figured out exactly where those lines are going to be as of yet.
And why are we doing this? I mean, what is?
We're doing this so that he can market these properties and be able to
Individually?
obtain, yes.
So in
and
other words,
be
if you
able
wanted to market that one parcel, you could market it to John Doe Builder? Is that what I'm hearing? And the other parcel to
well,
someone else?
Apparently, I'm getting something wrong.
Okay.
Mr. Moses is over there shaking his head. Okay. You need to be recognized by the chairman.
Yeah.
And then you can come up here and speak.
I'm going to let Wally finish up.
All right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just trying to understand what I'm looking at.
Okay. Fair enough, fair enough.
Hey, Wally, question, what is the property line basically divides the properties? Is that what we're talking about?
There will be a property line that will divide those properties, yes.
Okay.
It's not altogether different than what we did for Legacy, if you think about it, where we have about 5 or 6 phases, and Phase 1, for example, has about 146, actually a few more lots than that. Phase 2 and Phase 3 will have multiples of lots. So it's it's not altogether different than that. But again, those property lines do raise questions of setbacks and that sort of thing, and Mr. Moses understands that.
Well, it would make each parcel marketable on its own then, because each parcel would stand on its own.
That is correct.
Is that correct?
That is
So that
correct.
he's got a deed for each one of those parcels,
Correct. Which
Yep.
allows him to get financing more easily.
but it also
than
allows
he
him the ability to market it to someone else, right? I mean, if I'm,
That's correct.
okay. I mean, that may not be the intent, but I'm just saying, it does allow that possibility of being marketed to another entity.
It could, yes.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I don't know where I was, but I think that pretty much encapsulates the nature of his request.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not at all, not at all. So that's really the only change that we're making. All the other provisions that exist are still going to be there, including the safeguard that was put in February 2020 that basically we want to make sure he's done a construction building in each constructed the commercial building in each phase before he moves to the next phase. But in as much as Mr. Moses intends on building Phase 3 first, that will not be a problem.
All right, can I ask another question here, if you're finished your presentation? These three buildings here, 3, 4, and 5, are they commercial buildings?
3 and 4 will be residential,
3 and 4 is residential?
and 6 will be commercial.
6 is going to be...
4 and 5, yeah.
I'm sorry.
This Phase 3 and Building 3, I'm getting them. 4, buildings 4 and 5. will
Are
be
residential?
Residential, yes.
And building 6 is commercial?
Will be commercial, yes.
And what kind of commercial is that? I mean, do we have a... Are you talking about office building? Are you talking about, what exactly are you talking about in terms of commercial, or is there?
Well, that's probably a question best asked of the applicant.
I'm sorry, what, okay.
That might- yeah.
I hear you.
Wally, I have a question, and
Sure.
has the city received any application for an extension of the conditional use permit that has recently expired?
No, not as of yet. But we've certainly talked with Mr. Moses about that, and I would not be surprised to see something come in, the first half of next year.
Where's Phase 2 stand right now?
It's expired. The conditional use permit has expired. It expired back in September.
But, in other words, we're skipping Phase 2 and allowing Phase 3 to be constructed.
That is correct.
And why is that?
Well, because Phase 3, if you look at the map, Phase 3 has got, again, that's a question best asked to the applicant. I can surmise by saying that he's got more space available in Phase 3 than in Phase 2. But that's just,
Space.
that's speculation on my part.
Or-
Mr. Moses is here to answer any questions
Phase
you may
2
have
right
about
now.
that.
Right, yeah, here's Phase 2.
Now, the problem I see with Phase 3 with buildings 4 and 5, and I think we've touched on this before, is the setbacks. One of the reasons they allowed this big open area to be developed like this was so that they could get the maximum amount of buildings in the limited area that we have here. And without the borders, you don't have setbacks. So you can put those almost like side by side, buildings
Sure.
4 and 5.
Setbacks will be a challenge. No
Yeah, it's
question
gonna be a
about it.
big challenge because you're gonna lose parking spaces and everything else
Right.
if you don't get that's the crux of the thing is I believe the city council, particularly let it go that these had to be like this in order to get the buildings in the positions they are right now.
Yeah, I personally would like to see just a conceptual drawing of what we're looking at and how it changes what we're seeing here in terms of parking and setbacks and all of that. I mean, I think that's
Well,
something that we,
I understand what you're saying. I will say that that's all handled in the site plan review process. That's an administrative provision that we do through the NEPRC, which is a fancy way of saying our development team. And, you know, that's why I mentioned it as a part of the report, is that, you know, we've talked about that issue, and, I mean, we may have to resize a few buildings to make this work.
you may want, reduce the size.
It may have to.
Oh, yeah, he's
I
going
mean,
to have
I
to.
don't know.
Yeah, I don't see how you couldn't.
Again, I'm in the speculative field here.
But, yeah, you can, let's go ahead and
Let's hear it
if there's
from
any other questions for Wally, and then we'll open up the
All right.
public hearing. But I do have one more question for you, Wally. Is, kind of a little bit of an aside, is the EDA still on schedule for next month's planning commission meeting? Are they going to kind of,
Yes, they have a
Okay,
guest
okay,
coming to
great,
speak with
great.
us, yes.
all right, any other questions for Wally before we open up the public hearing?
I think basically that's it. I think we got to all the broad points with the questions.
And at this time, we'll open up the public hearing. If we have anybody that would like to come up and speak, please state your name and your address.
Hi, I'm Robert Moses, 89 Sandy Bay Drive, Poquoson. I'm the owner and applicant. My understanding is that the ordinance will still be the same in terms of even implementing the interior boundary lines in terms of the setbacks with exterior property lines as currently shown. We do have to walk through how the interior property lines will be implemented while maintaining the setback, which is only, I think, Wally, 10 feet?
10 feet.
10 feet, which is pretty easy to do because all the buildings are
on
at
each
least
side.
10 feet apart. So that's easy. The adjacent properties, since they're all zone BC, you can still have, and I own them, you can still have maintained exactly what I've got there in terms of where the buildings are located and the setbacks. So I don't think that's an issue. Now, the idea here is that, and let me walk through a couple of scenarios. So I had, for Building 2, a banker willing to lend financing back in February of last year. They were going to lend financing for new construction of Building 2. They were going to have to refinance Building 1 because it was not on a separate property. I finally got a bank willing to do that. I was going to have to take a hit for early prepayment of that loan by 3%, which is going to be sizable. But we were willing to move forward. Then COVID hit, and that bank no longer is in Poquoson. So how do we infuse other investors? If there's no interior property lines, then the only way to infuse additional investors is I have to dilute the LLC that owns it all. That is not a reasonable request because of the other members who are already in the LLC, they don't want their shares diluted. Now, because it's real estate, we should be able to say an investor wants to come in and own the ground floor of Building 6. How would I do that under the current situation? I can't without diluting his or her, the new investor stuff. The new investor wants to come in and say own a piece of Building 6. The only way to do it is to have a separate deed for Building 6 than I have for Building 1 or any of the other buildings. So there's only one way to do it, and that is basically the interior property lines. This is exactly what the banks pointed out when I met with planning 3 or 4 years ago. They wanted to have separate property lines between the buildings so that they didn't have to refinance, and it allowed new investors to come in and have their own deed, just like you'd have in a neighborhood. You're not gonna have more than one house on one piece of property, because then you're tied. How do you handle that? Property rights becomes an issue, and so does investment and ownership. So all I'm asking here is to be able to come in here and draw property lines. And I think it would look very much like it is right now, except that we'd have more buildings there. Because now it allows me to open it up to other investors without having to dilute the LLC.
Well, one of the things I'd like to see is, once you draw the property lines and get all the setbacks, what it looks like before we approve it, because right now, we don't know. I mean, you have an idea, you have a conception, well, but it hasn't come before this board as a practical entity, if you understand what I'm talking
I
about.
understand what you're talking about. I think the planning, Wally,
Yeah, to clarify, that is a site plan process, and the rear setback is 15, the sides are 10, the rear is 15. But moving on from that, we would do that as part of the site plan process. We would make sure his parking and his interior property lines, all the setback requirements are made. And
Well, why couldn't that have been done first and then shown to us?
well,
It seems to be backwards. The other thing is that 15 feet for each property line, so you're talking about a.
rear property line, yes.
Yeah, so for each property line, so it's 30 feet between the buildings.
That's a rear of, between these two would be the sides, the 10-foot.
We're talking 10 feet or 15 feet?
10
15 on
feet
the
on the
rear.
sides and 15 in the rears.
Okay,
And assuming the property line would divide the two, it would be 10 and 10 between,
20 feet,
and
right.
then 15 in the rears,
In the rears.
which would be in the direction of the EDA pond.
Yeah,
Where
which
are
I
they
think
right
is,
What is the setback on that right now? What am I seeing right there? What kind of setback?
well, when we came through last time, those buildings 5 and 4 back there, looks like they're going to be right at about 15 feet.
They're already
Put
at
the setback
15
right
feet, is
there.
what you're saying?
each
on
parking
the
space is
concept
about
plan,
9 feet
yes.
wide. So, yeah, I think that's about 15.
From the back of the building to that, whatever that green space is, I guess.
That pond line, the line of the
That is a
property.
15-foot setback already existing on these buildings then. So
Right.
you've already met the 15-foot rear setback. It would be the 10-foot.
Sides.
Well, when you start running property lines, you're gonna lose all those parking spaces, I assume,
We're
right?
going,
No, not at all.
That's why I want to see it.
Well, are you currently under a condo ownership right now? Is that what, do you have a condominium regime set up?
No condos,
What?
no condos.
It's no condominium regime. It's all one parcel then. I'm not not necessarily opposed to it. It's just that I would like to, I can't visualize if you had a conceptual drawing, it would have been easier, I think, to look at and,
Well, each parking space line is 18 feet long,
uh-huh.
and from left side of the car to the right side of the car is 9 feet. So you can see already that one parking space is almost the 20 feet between buildings, but not only is there one parking space, there's a driving aisle and then another parking space. So the 10 feet is easily met by this, between buildings is easily met by this concept
And
drawing.
how many units are in each building?
One more time.
I'm sorry, how many units were you expecting to place in each building? And
Building 4 will have 12 apartments. Building 5 will have 12 apartments. And then Building 6, that will depend on the incoming commercial tenants.
oh, well,
So that's going to be
How
like,
much
is
square footage they buy and where they want to put the bathrooms and so forth.
that a single level then?
No, it's 3.5 stories. Building 6 will be a really nice, attractive office building.
do you have any prospective office tenants? Because right
I
now,
do.
the offices
I've got
are really
a local
suffering.
person who is very interested in part ownership of the floor space that,
So you're able to sell off parcels of these in order to finance your continuing
The deed,
Construction.
the deeds will somehow work that out, but yes,
But yeah, if you own it, you can sell it. I mean, if it's deeded to you, if it's all under your one deed
Right.
with a property line, you can sell it to me or anyone else that's interested, correct? I mean, that's the intent, I would assume, to be able
But I'm-
sell
I
off
can't
building
answer
4
the-
and create money for you to build section 5 or building 5, right? In theory, that's the way it could work.
Yeah, but it's not clear that the person's going to take all of building 6. They may just take,
How would you sell part of a building if it's all on one deed? I mean, you could sell,
the way you set up the deed. I can be half owner of that building. The other,
yeah, but you couldn't specify, typically you wouldn't specify, well, I don't know. I don't, there's no need getting into that. I've never seen anything like that, but.
Else that you would like to add?
I can answer whatever questions, any more questions?
Polly, have y'all looked at a conceptual drawing of this? Can I not?
Oh, I was just
I'm
going to
sorry,
ask if you
I'm
had,
sorry.
if I can release Bob.
Well, he may still be able to answer some questions maybe that Wally can't. or
That-
Paul.
Well, no, we can, but we can ask Wally, and then if we need to bring.
Okay,
Bob back up.
okay, all right. I was just wondering, Wally, if you have, looked at a conceptual plan of what Mr. Moses is trying to do, have you looked at it?
Not on the level of what we've currently got. And we made a decision up in our last meeting with Bob that we could use this concept planning, understanding that they have to do a site plan that would show compliance with parking and with setbacks, and we would handle that at the staff review level like we always do, basically.
What's being presented is just for phases 2 and 3, is that correct? So phase
For
4 is
phase
not
three.
being
This
discussed?
is for phase 3.
Three only.
Buildings
Just 3.
4, 5, and 6.
And you would use area for phase 2 for the laydown for construction of buildings 4, 5, and 6?
No, we'd still be looking at the same area for phase 3, as far as I know. I mean, like I say, phase 2, the conditional use permit has expired, so there really can be no development on phase 2 till that gets reactivated.
Yes, I
If
understand.
it gets reactivated.
But construction laydown and everything, phase 2, or that all be contained in phase 3, is my question. If phase 2 is expired, then he would not be able to access any parts of phase 2 until it's presented back to the board, is that correct?
Well, he certainly couldn't build the buildings. I reckon he could probably use, if he had concrete in that area, he could probably use that as another entrance into phase 3.
Is phase 3 under a CUP?
Phase 3 is under a CUP.
Is that active, it has not expired?
It has not expired.
And when is it due to expire?
Let's see, 5 years from February
Oh, okay.
2020 to 2025.
23?
2025.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Wally.
All right, and we do still have the public hearing open, so are there any other members of the audience who would like to make remarks? Okay, and then at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing, and the commission will discuss. A good time. I do have a question. I was hoping to get a feel if everyone felt like they had a good sense of where the parcel boundaries were in the different zones, or if it would be helpful to have just a PowerPoint drawing, color-coded box on PowerPoint overlaid on this to kind of enhance the visual a little bit, or
I
does
agree.
everyone feel like they have a
No, I'm a
solid?
little confused.
Okay.
Quite honestly, I'm trying to, draw my pen around what each one is, and that would have been very helpful to have at least had it more delineated than what it is.
The phases, are you asking about how the phases are
The
delineated?
lines, phases.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see them, I won't say vaguely, but you can see them on the conceptual plan you have. If you look in between building 2 and 3, and then between building 3 and 4. You can see the line there that delineates phase 2 from phase 3. And I think, Madam Chair and members of the commission, what's important to, consider is that this request is specific to phase 3. And like Wally pointed out, all the requirements of the village commercial district, to include all the setbacks and parking requirements, will be subject to our site plan review, just as any would. I don't envision major distortion from this conceptual plan, and I think that's a major reason why we, when we spoke with Bob about it, that we thought that this was sufficient in its presentation to you all. So with those things considered, and you can, if you read Bob's, application, this is more or less just to allow him, I'll say, an easier way to secure financing for those buildings in phase 3 to be able to deed them on separate property lines. But regardless, he'll be subject to the site plan review just as he would any other time, and there will be no alterations to those requirements approved on a staff level. If you want to look, Mr. Moses just handed what I'll say conceptual boundary lines would be between 4, 5, and 6. Madam Chair, if you don't mind circulating that amongst the board.
I guess the only question I have in my mind is obviously a conceptual. But at the end of the day, if you meet setbacks and all the requirements, parking ratios and all of that.
That won't change.
That's fine. My concern is, once they're deeded separately, then they are individual parcels, and is that the intent of the fountains? Because let's say Mr. Moses gets this done, and he puts these parcels up for sale. And I said, well, I'll come in there and I'll buy one. So here I am in front of council or whoever saying, well, I don't really want to build apartments. I want to build whatever. Is there anything under his CUP that designates that building is always going to be apartments and this building's always going to be commercial? Because once they are separated and become separate parcels, which I don't have a problem with, once they're separated, but they are at that point a marketable separate piece of property. No different than your house, your house, your house. We're all in the block, and we all have separate property lines, and we all have a separate deed to our property. So at that point, he's able to market those parcels like that. And so I just didn't know how this village, I wasn't here when the Fountains of Poquoson was set up, so I'm not sure what the expectation was for these buildings, because right now, the demand for office space is very, very limited. I mean, I'm in the real estate industry, and I can tell you right now, apartments have continued to decline for the most part, and particularly in a lot of these big new buildings, they're sitting vacant. So it does concern me that, this is designated to be a commercial building. I'm assuming you're saying a 3-story office building. I don't think you'd fill a 3-story office building in here. I mean, I just see too many vacant buildings all across this area, the peninsula. And so if the demand is not there for, let's say for that building, to be a commercial building, does he have leeway to change that from commercial to residential?
Not without an amendment to the conditional use permit, because the conditional use permit, the condition stated was that each phase would have a 2-to-1 ratio of residential to commercial.
2 to 1.
2 to 1, which is what phase 3 is showing. These little teeny numbers in the column is what we actually looked at a lot closer at the time of the CUP amendments for both phase 3 and phase 4. And we paid special attention to him being able to meet his 2-to-1, I'll call it 2-to-1 ratio throughout all of the phases. including phase 4,
Well,
which we're not
including
talking
phase
about
3,
tonight.
so if he puts
Well,
these
yeah.
property lines here, you're still looking at that 2-to-1 ratio?
We're looking at that section, we're still looking at it as phase 3 of the Fountains development. But it may be in several different properties.
Well, I'm
But
just,
we're still looking at it as all of phase 3, so yes.
well, it would
he
be
still
phase
have to
3,
meet-
parcel 1, 2, 3, or something, I assume, if it's surveyed, you're gonna have it surveyed, correct? To have these parcels created, so it'll be phase 3 parcels ABC, or 1, 2, 3, or whatever the case may be. But I guess my biggest question was the demand, the demand is there for residential, but there has been no demand for commercial. Now, I don't know how successful you've been over here across by Food Line. Is that completely rented, the commercial? By Captain Harold's? Do you have any more commercial on that floor?
I've got 2 incoming tenants who are waiting for, well, I can't disclose their business, but they've already spoken for this space.
But do you have them under lease?
Yes.
You have a written lease?
They haven't moved in yet, yes.
Okay. Well, that was my only concern. Once we do this, at that point, does it have any effect on being able to do that? That's without coming back before the board and amending the CUP.
Correct.
So we don't have a problem if he does sell it to an investor to build their own apartment building, because theoretically, once he does this, and you've got 3 different parcels here, I guess it'll be 3, right? 3 parcels?
That's what he's showing in his little, quick
So-
drawing
so
there.
once you have those
That's
three-
certainly the most it would be.
3 parcels, anybody could come in and buy one of those parcels and build an apartment, but they would still be under the guidelines of what you've set out under this, that's been set out under the CUP in terms of architectural structure and those kinds of things. Is that
That
correct?
is correct. Yes.
Okay.
What's the liability in waiting for a clear PowerPoint that clearly spells it out, what we're doing in terms of, I'm feeling very abstract here, I'm having a hard time grasping it.
You'd be essentially asking him to do a lot of the work that we would normally look at as part of the site plan, which is why when we talked about this up in the city manager's office, we decided that this particular concept plan would be adequate for getting him to where he needs to go, understanding that he needs to do a site plan at that point.
I just wanted to see where he
The
drew
bottom
the
line is
Right
that
down the line
the
of the
things
park.
we're talking, some of the
Oh,
things we're
yeah.
talking about would be, adequate parking, setbacks, all,
We're not going to approve
we're
it.
not going to approve it. And then the second thing that's pertinent is that, even though if he decided, with 3 separate parcels, he could certainly sell to another individual, it would still be under the conditional permit, which is currently in place.
That's correct.
They wouldn't have to apply for a new one as a new owner?
No, the conditional use permit goes
Stay with
with
the
this
land.
development, goes with this
the land.
development.
Okay.
So with those 2 things in mind, it seems to me that it kind of clears it up. I don't know, to me it does. I mean, that's the 2 specific things that we're kind of called to see. We have to kind of trust the site plan process because that's kind of out of our hand, really.
One of the things that we've been talking about is conceptual, and you're asking us, I guess, to give permission and approve this without really knowing all the details of what it means. And it's like putting the cart before the horse. It'd been nice to be able to see the details done right and let us approve a plan that is now something he wants to do, rather than looking at the same map that we have and drawing a line down the parking lot. It may be, again, the same thing, but I don't know. I can't tell. This is all, 30,000-foot level documents.
I would just reassure you, Commissioner Stevens, that a new site plan or new conceptual plan will be subject to our site plan review process.
But again, it's putting you guys in front of us, so we're approving you to approve.
Well, that site plan review process is an administrative and staff function currently, and that's the reason we have our EPDRC, our Development Review Committee, to review those
And that's
site
also a
plans.
separate process from the rezoning amendment. I think it's important to realize too. You're approving a rezoning amendment, if you approve it, or recommend approval, based on the concept plan. The details, I don't think Mr. Moses will note now, perhaps he'll chime in here after Chairwoman recognizes him. But I don't know that he's going to know the answer to all those questions till he gets his prospective tenant lined up. I mean, I just don't think he's going to have the answers until that time comes.
Oh, what I'm hearing a couple different requests. The one, seeing more of the site plan, I'm hearing that request. Then I'm also hearing just more of a administrative request to have just this map exactly, but just, Thomas was able to, write the boundary line so that it's clear. But, and the quality of the map is such that, it's a little bit hard to differentiate this line font from that line font. And just having something documented that shows it a little bit more could, be something just PowerPointed in, here's a line, here's a line. So those are the two things that I'm hearing, the two requests. One was the site plan, which I think you definitely explained that process, and then the other one was just to have more information presented on this map showing the delineations, I think, a little bit more clearly.
I think that summarizes it well.
Anybody have any other questions or
Other than your recommendation is to move forward with it, is that correct? I mean, y'all have no problem with this?
Ours is, we did not, to be fair, we did not anticipate this amount of headwinds. Had we done that, we would not have scheduled this for a city council meeting next Monday. We tried a different process with this from what we usually do. What we usually do is the planning commission, because the planning commission meeting is early this month, it's normally on the third Monday, as you well know, and then we go for the next, depending on how the calendar falls, we either go for the first meeting of the city council in the next month or the second in some cases, because we have to meet our newspaper notifications. In this particular instance, we chose to advertise it all at once, making sure that we met the guidelines for both this meeting and the city council meeting. And we felt like this might be one that we could try. But, if it's not, I mean, don't let that influence your opinion. I'm just trying to be complete in what I'm saying here.
Well, could I just ask another question? This is called the Fountains of Poquoson. The other areas that are being developed, are they in smaller parcels? Any of them have small parcels like this or not? Are they all in large, like where the apartments are going and?
Legacy.
Your legacy, thank you. Like, are there any other developments within this overall development that have these kind of small parcels in them?
Well, of course, Legacy emanated from 27 different property owners, and it has since been basically fused together, but as we speak in Phase 1, we're expecting a final plat to come in that will show, like I said, 146, and a lot of those are townhouse lots, which are very small lots indeed. So, it's kind of a different animal, but it's the same kind of principle, is that you have a number of different properties within a phase. And the concept plan for Legacy, it's worth pointing out that, you did have a master plan there have been a lot of changes that were necessitated to that master plan as it's gone through the site plan and development plan process with us. So, this will still be subject to those same sort of changes if that's what it comes down to.
If, however we vote on this, it can still go before the city council.
Y'all have to make a recommendation.
Yeah,
one way or
it's
the
all
other.
it is, though, is a recommendation.
Right. But you
They're
got
the ones
6
that are
members.
going-
You have to have something other than the 3 to 3.
You go to council?
Yeah, because I have to give them a recommendation, either for or against.
And is this exactly what you'd take to council to? This same
Pretty
packet
close,
that you've
but
given us?
in light of tonight's questions, I'll probably embellish it a little bit.
Ask a question. Is the request to have the opportunity to place new property lines, not where the new property lines will be placed? Is
That's
that-
basically correct, is the opportunity to place the lines. We don't know where they're going to be exactly. That's where the site plan comes in. Mr. Moses may have an idea where they're going to be, but I really think that the little thing that you got around there was just something to kind of illustrate what we're meant for property lines. I'm not sure that he's going to know that till he actually get the tenant lined up.
Well, I don't know, the tenants are going to be the thing to line up. I think it's going to be how you situate these buildings on this parcel, how these parcels are laid out.
Yeah.
And how the buildings are situated, if maybe they get turned another way because you get your parking that you need or something of that nature. I don't know, but if the building were turned, I don't see where that is an issue. I don't see a detriment is what I'm trying to get at. I don't see any detriment to, and that's why, that's the only thing in my mind, that the lines are there. It affords him the opportunity to be able to finance each individual parcel or sell it as the case may be. So the fact that it goes to another individual or not, maybe it doesn't. To me, it doesn't really affect this as long as all the regulations are being adhered to.
Yeah, this is really an effort by Mr. Moses to get into a more favorable financial situation.
No, we understand that.
I get
yeah.
it.
The other thing is permit says to actually remove condition 3. It's not a feasibility study. He
Yeah, we thought
actually-
we'd just remove it. Just totally remove it.
Yep, so it's not a matter of whether they want to, they're gonna do it. That's what the request is.
Well, and I think something to keep in mind too is condition 1 that says the layout of any development of the site shall generally adhere to the conceptual plan of this. So moving, I don't know how much is generally adhering. I don't know what fine line that is, but to me that says things may shift a little bit, but you're not going to, if you have major changes, and that would revisit the whole conditional use.
That's what I meant, Madam Chair, when you said it, I think we expect major distortion in the conceptual plan of what you have now and what's presented when he gets to the site plan review process. I think as Mr. Rabel, was pointing out, is that, all those, we have that code for a reason and our process for a reason, and those requirements, there won't be room to waiver as far as staff approval goes. So I can comfortably say, rest assured that we'll do our jobs to make sure that our site plan requirements are met. This is simply allowing Mr. Moses to establish property lines so that he can more easily secure financing.
In fact, the site plan approval process is mentioned in conditions, so.
Had a lot of discussion. Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to, accept or to approve the request for Poquoson owner and applicant, revise the terms of rezoning, so forth, as it's written here.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Commissioner Shriver?
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Stevens?
No.
Commissioner Brennan?
No.
Commissioner Deaver?
Aye.
Chairwoman Emmett?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-2.
All right. And as you pointed out, this is just a recommendation, so this will go in front of the city council. Sounds like next Monday. So we look forward to hearing their discussion for that. And I, I think case in point, having just clearer boundary lines, I think that was brought up and would be helpful for council to have to help in their decision. So thank you. And is there time for communications and correspondence, Wally?
Nothing.
I think the only thing I would say is expect a meeting in January for the EDA discussion, as well as the possibility of a conditional use permit application.
Question on that. I know my time has already passed, but since we mentioned that, we could do the talk from the EDA in a work session, or we could do it in a regular session. I guess that's really my only question as far as how the planning commission would want to do that.
You guys have thoughts? Would you rather just have it at 7 o'clock and get through? Do you know if the conditional use application that's a potential, would that be a relatively quick one?
The one I'm anticipating, I'm speculating. I don't think
Yeah.
it would be a lengthy discussion.
For me personally, I would think combine them and meet at 7 instead of 6, but unless anyone has objections to that.
I agree.
Well, I will get in touch with economic development tomorrow, and I will tell them 7 o'clock.
Bonnie?
I don't have anything really. I was just, and I was wondering if we have someone that could adjust the crossing down close to where I walk, where they've had the little island on Poquoson Avenue, you put up the flashing yield sign, you press the button. It doesn't last long enough to cross, and it's a potentially very dangerous situation. Kind of wanted to give it some airtime tonight. Maybe somebody will correct it, because it gives you a false sense of security in crossing. I know when you get up to it, it doesn't stay on long enough, and people zoom around there anyway, even with it going, but you'd have a shot of getting across. A lot of people don't really look up the road like I'm worried about it a little bit. I know I'm very aware of cars coming to the right of me, but some people just trust and go right across that little pathway, and I'm afraid if somebody will be able to adjust, they'll show it.
We can mention it to
Yeah, I
engineering.
wish you would, please do
We'll
it.
do that
It's
tomorrow.
nice to have it there. I wish it could flash constantly when you're trying to get across. Thank you.
It has been a long time since we've had this many board members together and having a full room. It's felt nice. It's been a long time since we've sat here without masks on, so hopefully this trend quickly approaching the holiday season. So I wish everybody Godspeed and safe travels to any family. Everybody again in the new year.
Libby?
I'm good.
Second.
Tom?
The only thing about tonight is that from an engineering standpoint and everything I've ever done, I've seen more detailed stuff to be either accepted or not. I understand what the board's doing, and I'm not saying that it's a wrong thing to do, but I would have liked to have seen the more detailed stuff, and that is your jobs, to do that, to present to us, so we don't have to ask so many questions. That's all.
I echo Tom's comments and wish everybody a happy holiday. And Bonnie, I was laughing when you said about crossing the street, because I was in a restaurant last night, and the guy was bringing me to the table. And I said, "Why are you going so slow?" And he says, "Well, most people your age go slow." I said, "Give me a break."
That's funny.
Wasn't there a, before the city council, a realignment of that intersection, is what I heard? You talking there where the half ship used to be and going across? Yeah, I understood there were, I don't know what the results were, but at one time there was a motion by the city council to realign that so it wasn't so dangerous.
Well, it was realigned, and it kind of made it a little more dangerous after the realignment. I grew up on that corner. It's always been a very dangerous corner.
Well, I agree with
Very
you.
dangerous. But the flow of traffic now is a little more wide open. You know, if you're kind of used to it, but I've noticed a lot of people, you know, walking there. I mean, it's a lot of traffic walking, particularly with students. You know, they're all kinds of stuff there, and it just looks like to me it may be, you know, it may be a problem at some point. Could you go across that? You cross right where that sign is, and you go on a little walkway, and you think because you press that button, you're just as safe as you can be, and you're not. You know, some people don't, I think, maybe thought to look. I've seen one have a close call there, and it's kind of scary. They come around that yield sign just as fast.
The ship's
There
sort of
is no
slowing people
yield
down.
there, really. They come around and they, if you step out, you're done.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on that with my comments because I think that our city has a great opportunity. I'm hoping that it has a great opportunity. In November 10th, there was an article, and I'll be brief. The APA, the American Planning Association, Planning Magazine put out an article, and it was called 7 Ways New Infrastructure Package Invest in Planning. And I was really excited to read these things because it seemed like they really applied to our community. They had things like funding for local planners and for smaller municipalities, resilient coastlines funding, safe to schools initiatives like sidewalks and things like that. You know, different transportation. Some of them weren't so applicable, but a lot of them were really applicable to our town. And the neat thing is that so many of those align to what our goals are in the comprehensive plan. I'm hoping that this will be an opportunity for our city if we do get this funding and some of these grants that come our way. So that could go right into something like that. So that's my comment. Okay. And if there's no other comments, we will go ahead and adjourn right before 8 o'clock. And thank you all for coming, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.